Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today we have 3 brand new stories for you. Let's start our video with a story in which karma came back to the jerk on the road. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Road Rage Payback. This story happened to me about a year ago. I was driving to lunch from the office and had to run an errand along the way. I worked downtown and had to drive a few miles through some busy neighborhoods to buy some expensive dog food. Traffic is stop and go and a bit congested. I'm on a one-way street with 2 lanes. I'm driving in the left lane. This has a lot of people slowing down to take left turns, and it generally gets everything backed up and slow. There are a few red lights to slow things down even more. I'm going along with the flow and just happy to be out of work. The traffic finally gets to a traffic light that I see we're going to make, so I scoot through the intersection just before the light turns yellow. Right after I pass all the way through the intersection, the light turns red. Someone about 4 cars ahead of me decides it's time to learn how to parallel park, so we all come to a stop and wait. I'm just through the intersection, but because of the parking lesson going on in front of me, I'm right to the edge of the cross-traffic lane. After a good 5 count, after the light is turned red, I hear a loud honk, so I look in my mirror thinking it's cross-traffic and I'm sticking out too far. No, it's some jackwagon who decided to run the light in a souped-up Acura. He screeches and skids to a halt right behind me, flips me off. He's honking and cussing at me and waving his arms at me like WTF. I look back and throw my arms up like, what am I supposed to do? There are 4 cars stopped in front of me. So Super Douche puts his car in reverse and peels out backwards, still cussing me out like crazy. Then he puts it in drive and floors it while screaming, "Effing hell!" He goes around me in a perfect circle and loses control of his car and completely T-bones the car in front of me. Crash! The guy in front of me's in a big pickup truck and looks back at me, and I give him the shrug and head shake. I pull around the crash in front of me, now the traffic is cleared up, and give him the death stare and say, "A-hole," as I drive by on my way. He's super pissed. Freaking out super pissed. Absolutely raging. And our next story. Read the city codes. I'm in my mid-30s, own a 120-year-old Victorian home that happens to be on the city's historic registry. I believe my 60-year-old neighbor, who happens to be a licensed clinical social worker, is jealous of the status of my home and thinks she owns the block. This happens to take place on a town block where most properties are a quarter acre at best. My neighbor, the one in question, and I happen to have homes with a half-acre or bigger backyards, football field long, next to each other. After living here for 2 years, I happen to have friends over and pretty loud music set up in the backyard on a July evening, 5 to 6 p.m., DJ, turntables, and a single 15-inch PA speaker. I notice her come home through the fence and start trolling her backyard while talking on the phone. A few minutes pass and I was visited by law enforcement that pretty much stated, "You're good to play at the current volume until 10 p.m. when the noise ordinance kicks in." Perfect. I go back to enjoying my family and friends and cooking meat. 20 or so minutes later, she comes out and parks her lawnmower right next to the fence and fires it up, zip ties it in the on position, and goes back inside. This went on for about an hour, embarrassing me in front of my guests, pretty much ruining the evening. We slowly lower the volume nearing 10 p.m. noise curfew. The mower shuts off around 9 p.m. I kept playing music as the sun went down and started a fire in my pit, then promptly shut the music off right at 10. This is when we began noticing her trolling the backyard, this time recording us with her cell phone. Very embarrassing for me to my guests. I confront her with a text talking about how much pollution her mower made versus her hybrid vehicle as a passive-aggressive knock to her. I start exiting guests and wishing them a good night while walking them out of the yard at 10:30-ish or so. This is when we notice her in her yard with these fake little coughs like the fire is bothering her now. At this point, I realize I can't use my backyard for entertaining at all with this lady around. Her response text told me to read the city codes regarding noise. I know the code and followed it perfectly. However, I didn't read the other codes. one of which is regarding trash and appliances, etc. in backyards. Good time to say her backyard literally looks like a junkyard. Appliances, trash, 20-foot dead tree pile, hoarder style, paths to the cruft. We have pretty mature trees separating us, however it's still pretty visible. My guest that night even brought it up. I figured this is a good time to report her to the city regarding her cruft. This opened a 2-year can of worms of her as slow as she could every night, an hour or two, cleaning the cruft under the view of the city code officer. Fast forward through the summer to Christmas 2017, with her backyard still pretty messy, I placed a Hoarder Season 1 DVD on her porch with a bow. A wonderful passive-aggressive event in my malicious mind. Then, near this event a few nights later, she let her dog out past dark and seems to keep it outside all night despite the below-freezing temperatures and feet of snow. At this point, she's putting her dog in harm to get back at me, it seems like. My bedroom's at the rear of my house, and obviously I can hear it through the window. I then go outside despite the freezing temperatures as well and follow her above lead and take a 30-minute video of her dog barking and wailing at the cold. I sent this video to Animal Control. No way, lady, don't put your dog in harm's way as a tool to get back at me. The dogs then seem to disappear. I haven't seen a dog over there since to this day. Thank you, Animal Control. Fast forward to spring 2018. Around this time, I place a camera in my front window for general security as she's building a fence between our houses, boxing herself in, attempting to block my view of trash rather than finish cleanup. She then gets a surveyor to come out post-construction, and I notice her new fence is 1 foot onto my property, all the way back. I'm keeping this one in my back pocket. This is when she pretty much disappears herself. She no longer parks in her driveway, gone. One day, weeks later, I notice her car in the driveway of the home behind hers. On the next numbered street, she's parking there and walking through his backyard into hers to get into her house. Pretty strange behavior over a camera I've placed. Her place has since gone dark, no lights ever. Even as I write this now, very strange. I notice her every once in a while drive by. Get on that fence thing right away. Believing you have 7 years to deal with it may cost you part of your property. And our last story. Abuse my disabled mother's disability rights? That'll be £10,000. So basically myself, my middle cousin, and my mother suffer a genetic disability. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome type 3. And this means we have certain needs. My mom used to work in an office job, which for the sake of the company's privacy, we'll call them TJ. I was never really clear on what her job was. Nothing special, since most of the time her office team had a lot of nights out and posted office pranks on Facebook, but it was something to do with computers, handling data and technology, taking phone calls, etc. TJ was not a huge company. I mean, the building was huge and very modern, but they didn't have much money. They lived on a road where there was a rundown abandoned bar, a company that got shut down and had been trying to sell the building for 2 years, and a small mechanic's garage, so you can imagine the financial situation. Anyway, the company was well aware of my mom's disability and the fact that she was working 2 other jobs at the time. She was a single mother of a disabled child and struggling to make ends meet, and the pay from all 3 jobs was just barely cutting our bills. However, whenever my mom made a request to have a day off due to a sudden sickness or a hospital appointment or certain equipment to make her hours more bearable, they rarely allowed her. One time she asked for a certain type of chair that was made for people with C-shaped backs like us. She even said she'd settle for a cheaper chair that just had a softer back, and they denied it, saying she could manage without. She was sitting for 7 hours, 4 days a week, and they couldn't even make the seating more comfortable? Then when the receptionist, who was completely able-bodied, made a request for comfier seating, her needs were met without question. My mom was understandably angry and made a complaint, to which they replied they'd need a doctor's note that said she needed better seating, which the receptionist had not needed to send in. However, my mom went out of her way to get a doctor's note, and they got her a chair in the end, although it wasn't much better than before. Countless times when she asked to leave early for hospital appointments, she was told she'd have to reschedule the appointments, as she ended up missing a lot of appointments due to this, which sometimes happens, and it's excruciating. Anyone who's experienced this knows what I mean. She was told to get a babysitter or tell my dad to catch a train down. He lived almost an hour car journey away and look after me. My mom hated this job, but she couldn't leave. Eventually, she got a lawyer involved. She told him everything that had happened with any receipts she could provide. She also was best friends with her team's boss, who defended her in the court case. They went over everything that they could do. She could sue the company for damages, she was told, and so she hatched a plan in her mind. She thought long and hard and found receipts for any instances she could find. She was examined by doctors for any changes or conditions that were developed because of the office job. She had developed several conditions that permanently changed her body. She asked friends, and she even brought up old emails and letters. Eventually, they had enough to sue for £10,000 in damages, and they won. My mom quit that job and started working instead at a local salon as a hairdresser, which was her occupation before she got pregnant. And after that shutdown, she became a self-employed hairdresser and spray tanner, which she had to quit because due to the office job she had developed boots and air disease and couldn't do either of them. As of now, she's working for a really rich guy who pays her a couple $100 to drive around and drop his products off to clients in other cities. She commonly does a 3-hour drive every other night for £400 up front, and he even pays her to bring him alcohol since he lives next to his Muslim mother who doesn't let him drink. She also gets help from her electrician boyfriend on the bill since he lives with us. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.